Hey YouTube, and welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So this video here is part 1 on this Holden Maloo painted in Sting Red. All we're going to be painting on it is that hard lid there. We're going to be painting the left-hand front guard and also a couple of these moldings that you see around the rear windscreens, those rear quarter glasses, and that center section there. So first up, we've got to assess the damage and then decide exactly how we're going to go about it. And as it turned out, there was no actual body repairs on it. It was just simply some delamination and a bit of faded paint. So this fender here didn't even need any primer. It was literally a sandback and a bit of color in 1 or 2 spots where there was a little stone chip, and then re-clear it because that fender had been done in 2-pack before, so not clear over base. And you can see on this hard lid here we've got some delamination. So originally I was thinking most of that is all just gonna rip straight off, and I was thinking I'm going to have to take all of that clear coat off. But after sanding into it with some 180 grit, I actually realized, as you'll see here, it is feathering out, and we did actually get some adhesion. So I was able to just sand that back with some 180 grit. As you can see, I've sanded all the edges down with a bit of Scotch-Brite or a bit of a 320 by hand, and made sure there's no shiny edges. Then we'll get it into the booth and get some primer onto it. Really just some basic masking at the moment. And yep, you're probably wondering, oh, why didn't you pull those quarter trims off and why didn't you pull it all apart? Because this car came in around midday, and I just thought, you know what, to save stuffing around, I'll just get some primer on it this afternoon. The next day I can come in, strip it down, and then we can start getting the paint onto it and getting it prepped up for paint work. So that's just a bit of time management, you know. It's one of those things that extra half an hour to an hour stripping it all down may make the difference in between not getting it primed up that day. So yeah, you just got to prioritize. Also, it's easier to move the car around without having that big hard lid and trying to maneuver that around as well. So in the booth, getting the sheet of plastic over it, and as I said, it's really just going to be a basic mask for primer. I'm going to be using a lot of hard edges and just staying away from them. There's nothing wrong with that. It's probably something I don't teach to apprentices, but that's just simply because they have a tendency to go up to their edges. If you've got a bit of experience with the gun and you're confident that you can stay away from those hard edges, there's nothing wrong with doing it, as long as that you've given yourself enough room. So this video is mainly going to be focusing on masking and a bit of the primer work. So we're going to do this primer work here. We'll put a few coats of primer on it, and then we'll be mainly focusing on the masking stage. It turns out that for some reason I didn't get much footage of the prep work on this, but I had loads of footage on masking just the one panel, which is just that guard, because all of these other panels, they're coming off the car, as I mentioned before. That section that runs around the rear windscreen, that's coming off. These 2 quarter trims are coming off. Also the hard lid's coming off as well. We've got to pull 1 or 2 of the door handles out, but that'll be done later on too. That's not anything to worry about at the moment. It's just that masking, as I said there, bit of hard edge masking there, that's fine. And I got a little bit of rope underneath those quarter glasses too, just to lift that rubber up to stop us from getting a big thick edge. Now you do have to be careful with some of these factory plastics. I'm not sure if it's the plastic, but I'm probably more inclined to say that it would be the kind of paint or even the kind of plastic primer that they use. I would highly recommend using 2-pack primer on all these kinds of factory plastic parts, because if you go and use 1K primer, you'll go and get it in the booth, all happy days, go and put your first coat of base coat on and maybe a touch too heavy, and then it'll just go and fry up, and you got bad days ahead, bad times. I've actually got a video on my Raw channel of me losing the plot a little bit, and then I actually managed to fix a bit of a fry up. So go check that out if you like. I'll put a annotation in later on in this video if you wish. Anyway, once I got all that masking done, which is really quite basic, I did decide not to prime the entire panel, but that was just because it simply didn't need it. It's a waste of product, and then you've also got more coverage when you're talking getting the color on as well. So rather than just having a few sections to get covered, you've got the entire thing to get full coverage over again. And again, I decided to leave this footage in. It is a handy little trick when you've got a full pot of primer and you only really need to mix up say 300 or 400 mils, rather than grabbing that primer pot and tipping it up and then getting primer all over the place and dripping all over the side of that can. That's a very handy little tip to do. Now another thing about the color of your primers, a guy from another big channel called the Refinish Network, he talks in his videos a lot about using exactly the same color primer as on the job. Well, I personally don't really think that you should have red primer on your car. I don't think that you should have green primer on your car, but I also don't think that you should have black primer on a white car. I saw him put some photos up on Facebook about that, and yeah, that is wrong. But I do believe that this color is a perfect color for any single car. Even on a black car, I'd happily use it. Answer being to that is that your black's going to cover after 2 coats anyway. And if you get a stone chip, so what? It's light grey primer. You got a stone chip, you put a brush over that. It's just my personal opinion. I've always believed that. And at the end of the day, you're talking, a panel shop. Like, you're talking, what, 10, 15 putty ups of a night? You're going to mix up, a batch of primer for the red cars and then a batch of primer for the green cars. You're going to mix up 5 different batches of primer. In reality, it's probably not really going to happen. There are, options out there. You've got the, DuPont or Chromax by now, the value shade primers, and you mix up anyone by putting your different base coat colors or whatever into there. I've actually also found that using some of these other different colored primers, because they've got color in there, they don't rub properly. I've also found that the light gray primer is, for some reason, the best to sand. White primers, they're nearly impossible to see what you have and have not sanded. So you'll be struggling when you're doing your prep work. Even using guide coats, they really are just a guide. But yeah, being that the grey primer seems to have that little touch of black in there, it will just enable you to see where has been and has not been sanded. But then you go down the other end of the spectrum, you go real dark primers and black primers and coloured primers. I've found that when you start sanding them, they'll clog the sandpaper up really quickly. There's probably something to do with the extra pigment in the primer that just makes it tricky to sand. It's sort of nearly like sanding clear. It's not that bad, but it's nearly like that. Look, the way I look at it is there's probably a reason why 95% of all primers are light grey, because it's probably chemically the best primer to use, and it's a good universal ground coat, I have found anyway. Anyone who's tried sanding a bit of fresh clear will know exactly what I'm talking about. It just clogs your sandpaper straight up. Obviously once it's dried out, for a month, it's fine to sand. But hey, there may be people out there that totally disagree with me, say you don't know what you're going on about, Gunman. That's just my opinion. It's what I've found works, and yeah, most of the feedback I've been getting is keep doing what you're doing, Gunny. You're making good videos, so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Anyway, you may have noticed, so the first coat of primer, it really was just a medium wet coat. I'd be worried if I went and put that first coat on like I did put this coat on here, real wet. I'd be worried that you'd get some shrink back and edge mapping and all that kind of stuff happening. So first coat, just a sort of grip coat, I found you go and put it on too heavy, and the solvents, even in that primer, will be enough to eat into those exposed layers that you've sanded into it. Once you got that on, you can put your heavy coat on, but it was still thick, that primer was still 10%. Now, you may have noticed in between coats, I walked back over to the paint bench. I literally just sprayed a bit of thinners into my gun and then just shook it up, gave it a real good shake up, and that's my way of thinning it down to maybe 15%. There was no body filler repairs. It's only really going to get a quick block. It's not like there was dents or ripples or any major waves in this panel that I'm trying to remove, but you can see there I did do a little bit of blocking just in that section where I did cut through a few spots. But the main purpose of priming this car was to seal it down so that we've got a nice coat of 2-pack primer over the entire thing, so that I'm happy that when I put my base coat on, we're not going to be getting any big shrink back areas. And that honestly was the main reason behind doing the primer work on this car. Now, some of these things I say may seem just general knowledge, but it's not the case for everybody, because everybody isn't a painter, and yeah, it's something for me to talk about. I'll just tell you everything that comes to mind when I'm watching myself working in the edited video. I was actually going to leave this section here unedited, but I thought, I'd edit it down a little bit. But yeah, you'll get most of the footage of me masking this guard out here. So yep, start off by doing the front and back edges of your guard. and then do your backmasking on the center section of it. I know you're probably all sitting at home wondering why I didn't pull the headlight out, and I'm actually sitting at home wondering why I didn't pull the headlight out either. Looking back on this, like this footage here is probably about 3 or 4 months old now, and yeah, there's probably only a few bolts holding that thing in, but it really is no big deal. You guys will get to see a bit of how I use the 3M edge masking tape, like the trim masking tape. There's also like other ones on the market like the J tape, which is pretty good. It's like got a perforated edge on it. Oh, they're pretty expensive though. They're like $60 each, man. Like, so yeah, when you're using stuff like that, and even masking tape, you know, I always try to minimize it without being a total tried-ass. If you need a bit of tape, you need a bit of tape, you know. But little things like when you see me close this bonnet here, rather than going and getting a whole another piece of 2-inch and taping it down, I'm just flipping it back over on itself, and you know, that's serving the same purpose as grabbing another piece to tape it down with. It's just, you get yourself into the habit of these little things, and it just comes second nature. It's not like it takes you any longer, and yeah, over a career, it'll save money. That one thing that I do might not save much, but if you do little things like that every step of the way, well then it's probably going to add up. Yeah, and in this instance, I was working for myself. 90% of the time I've been an employee, not an owner of a workshop, and I've always actually had a good work ethic. The way I've always seen it is the more money the boss earns, the more money I can earn. Like the first place that I started my apprenticeship in, they didn't even have the 2-inch tape, or 36mm I think this masking tape is here. I apologize, I think I called it 2-inch before. But basically the way I say it, if you can't afford to buy a few rolls of 2-inch tape to mask your car up, well then you probably better look at your quoting system more so than your materials use, because it takes twice the amount of time to mask up, and you're going to use twice the amount of masking tape. So yeah, just buy the right materials for the job, but just don't overuse them. And yeah, just take note of how I did mask the back edge of that guard up. I've had a few people ask that exact question. Personally, I don't think it necessary to open that front door and back mask the front edge of the guard. This is the way I was taught to mask a guard up, and it's worked perfectly fine my entire career. You just get that piece of 36mm tape, 2-inch tape, whatever kind of thick tape you do have, and slide it halfway or as far under as you can get it under the back edge of that guard or fender, whatever you want to call it. I think they even call it a wing in the UK, in parts of Europe and stuff like that. We generally refer to wings as, you know, things on airplanes that you fly with, but yeah, that's entirely up to you. It cracks me up, those guys in Australia referring to a door mirror as a wing mirror. Yeah, you'll probably find that a wing mirror is one of those mirrors that, you know, used to go on a wing, as in a fender or a guard, not a door mirror. Yeah, so don't be silly. Don't use those kind of terms. Anyway, if you haven't already realized, I'm starting to run out of shit to say in this video because I'm just masking this car up, you know? I'm using masking tape and I'm using my fingers to put the masking tape on with. So listen to some tunes. Either that, or you can skip up to the 17-minute mark and I'll take you through the remainder of this job. Hope you enjoy. Oh, this song here is called Voodoo Like You. I found it on the YouTube Create section. It's one that I do like, and it's something that I can put on my videos without having to worry about copyright infringement. So hope you enjoy it. So there we go, y'all. Obviously, after I got the masking done, I gave it a really good wipe down with some wax and grease remover. I've then gone and put a little bit of black on the center section of that hard lid that was actually requested by the customer. Now, this is just a little bit of a sneak peek as what you're going to be getting in the next couple of videos. So the next video is probably just going to be dedicated to base coat, and the next video after that will just be the clear coat. Be sure to check out my website, thegunman.net.au. I've been spending loads of time over there lately, having a bit of fun and learning a few things myself on how to build websites. This is us doing a little bit of the polishing stage before we finish the job off. Hope you have enjoyed watching this video. If you have, give it a big thumbs up. Now you've seen this video, get out there and paint some shit. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.